and Rosemary
with Authentic Food Quest, coming to you today on November 17th from Greece.
And we are in Crete, which is the largest island in Greece, and it's the
fifth largest in the Mediterranean.
In the Mediterranean.
Yes.
To talk about is how we travel safely. If you do have to travel, we have to say it has been quite stressful for us to travel. And so we don't necessarily recommend it. But if you do have to travel, we wanted to share a few tips and advice on how to do best to, make sure that you stay safe along your journey.
So why did we have to travel? We're digital nomads. We've been digital nomads for the last 5 years, which means that we don't have a home.
So when we're told stay at home, it becomes a bit challenging.
It becomes a bit challenging for us. Digital nomads, when we're traveling, we usually, in the US, we usually do some house sitting. And now with people staying at home and not traveling, they certainly have no need to have someone else take care of their pets or their homes. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. When we're exploring the food in different countries, we do different things. We sometimes stay with locals, but more recently have been renting a place and staying by ourselves. And that's partly also because of safety. This situation has really put a sharp focus on the way that we travel, and for us, knowing that as digital nomads, we needed to find a place that we could settle down for the winter. And Greece was one of the countries that we had talked about exploring the cuisine. And Crete specifically has a mild winter. And so we thought that it would be a great place to, be safe, stay for a while, explore the food, and then see what happens.
We were in Mexico when the shutdown happened across the world.
This was in the spring, the first shutdown. Mm-hmm.
We stayed there 9 months, and really we extending our stay much more than what we had planned. Yeah. So now we are going through a second wave of lockdown in some countries. And so what we wanted to share is, again, if you have to travel, where can you travel first? So we use something you can use as well is called a Skyscanner map. Section of the site on Skyscanner, but is showing you regarding the region, the country you're from, where can you travel to. So here is the website is set up from the United States. And what it tells us, if we were to scroll down, it shows us here what are the different countries in the world that impose restrictions on the United States. Very few impose no restriction. The website comes with a map. So here is what it looks like. If, again, this is from in United States, we are seeing all the red countries and what the gray countries where we cannot travel to as a US citizen. And only a few countries in green are showing that they're open for US citizens to go to. What's left in yellow is some countries where there are restrictions on traveling from the United States to that country. And restriction varies, so you need then to check on the state websites what are the exact restrictions. Things evolve constantly. This is a screenshot of today, as it is up to date from Skyscanner.
You can travel in some cases, but just make sure that you look at what the requirements are.
We were talking about restrictions, and for us, we had to go from the United States to France before we came here in Crete. In this case, and this is a case for many countries, that's why we'd like to share our experience. France requires a PCR test that is done within the 72 hours prior to flight departure. And this is only available for French citizens. The recommendation is not to travel if you don't have to. So if you do have to go, you need a PCR test done, and it's a swab test, which has to be done within 70 hours prior to flight departure. And they're really strict in terms of hours. It's not 3 days, it's 72 hours. So you want to make sure you've done your test at the right timing. Labs are not very clear themselves, but the airlines and the countries are very clear about those rules. Experience to do this PCR test has been quite challenging and stressful, to be honest. Because the labs are telling you that they can get your test result done within back within 2 to 3 days for most of the labs, and very few are offering within 24 hours. And so that's been a quite stressful and.
So we were doing our PCR test in Chicago on our way to France, and so finding a place that could to do it was a little challenging at first, but there are more and more centers that are now open that are providing COVID PCR tests. Our flight was on a Sunday. And if you're thinking of traveling, one piece of advice is to maybe not to travel on the weekend. And that's only because it took a long time. The websites for the test centers say that you'll get your results between 24, 48 hours, but the reality is something else. As a matter of fact, we needed to call the labs to find where our test results were. But because we were traveling on a Sunday, the labs were closed. So
one lab was open,
one lab was open, one lab was closed. So it's just a piece of advice because everything is so restricted, and the labs, the people who do the testing are not the people who do the evaluation of your swabs. That's done at the lab level. And so there's so many layers, and if you can do it on a weekday, we would certainly recommend that. If we could do different, we would definitely have done that. One of the things that we found with the PCR testing was some airports are offering them for free. And so we left Chicago to LaGuardia in New York.
We had a layover.
There before our ongoing flight to Paris. And we were so surprised as soon as we arrived in LaGuardia to see announcements about free COVID tests. So those
for at the airport itself.
At the airport itself, and results within and apparently results within 24 hours. So we were quite impressed to see that. We didn't see that at Chicago O'Hare or even Chicago Midway. We didn't see that, but we did see it at LaGuardia.
Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport was also offering a free COVID test. Our recommendation is also to take more than a test, one lab, which was advertising that they were doing test results within 24 hours. And when we went to do the test, we learned that it would take 2 to 3 days result. I mean, we don't understand. This is what you're saying on your site. So we had to call them, and they said that this is something that they're implementing, very soon, but it's not ready, and the website is not up to date. So we took another test, fortunately, to get our results. And we would recommend also to make sure you have done more than one test and not rely only on one, because it might not come back on time. Which is, again, really
frustrating.
Frustrating.
Yes.
One thing to know is the PCR tests can be free. The PCR tests we did were free. Our insurances were also covering it, but the one they were offered for free. And some lab will require you to pay. In the US, it can go up to $180 for a COVID test.
Those tests will have to be made via appointment. So plan to book your appointment ahead of time to ensure that you can get your test done in the time that you need it done.
So that's for the PCR test. And again, many countries would require a PCR test and within 72 hours.
Now, when we got to Athens from Paris, we were surprised to have a random PCR test done that day. So that might be something that you might experience. Now, the thing that we want to just emphasize here is keep up on the requirements from every country as they're changing constantly. So just keep up with what's needed, when it's needed, and how to present it. In some cases, you might need your PCR test as a printout. We were able to use ours on our phone. So there might be some restrictions around how you can even present your negative test results. So be aware of all of that, and there's a lot to manage in that time.
Yes. There's a lot of gray area. On our flight in United from New York, LaGuardia to we were changing airports. We were Newark, to Paris, Charles de Gaulle. There was a gentleman who was doing a layover in France and going to a destination where he could travel, I think, without PCR test. United didn't allow him to board the flight. He was very angry and frustrated, but he could not do anything. He had to present a PCR test, even if his final destination was not France. So something to know.
So let's talk a little bit about safety tips on the plane and traveling in general. The first thing that you'll want to do, and I think will come as no surprise, is to always have your mask on. Get a good mask, a good solid mask, invest in that.
KN95 is recommended.
So that's what we have. Possible have gloves with you or some sanitizers when you're going through the airport with the check-in. So here we are with our K95 masks. Yes. One thing that we do recommend and that we noticed at all the airports we went through is, the bags where the little bins that they ask you to put your computer, your clothes, those are not sterilized.
And you have to use them.
So, make sure that you have your own hand sanitizer with you, and they're allowing you to go through with hand sanitizer, certainly of a minimal portion. But have that with you, because those bins and all of that is still not COVID ready, so to speak. And so when it comes to the airplane experience specifically, we noticed a couple of things in the different countries we traveled through. On the international segments of our flights, there are much fewer people on the flights. So I think this will be no surprise, much fewer people. But on the domestic segments of our flights, especially within the United States, we certainly noticed a lot more people at the airports and on the airplanes themselves. We still had the middle seat open. In some cases, but I'm not sure how long that's going to stay open and available. So you might want to check with the airlines or just be aware of what the airlines' policies are. United did a really good job of giving you hand sanitizer, hand sanitizer wipes. But that's not true in all the airlines. So, as we mentioned earlier, be prepared with your own mask, your own hand sanitizer, and just take care of yourself from that point of view.
You can even use a face shield. We did use a face shield. This is on our flights from New York to Paris. You see how empty the flight is. And we did use face shield. They are very cumbersome. You have to weigh, if that's something you want to use. It's certainly a bit safer in terms of managing the environment. But it's not really easy to travel with. We've seen people with hazmat suit full on. So very few, but they do exist. So
there's a whole range. Now, when it comes to the food specifically, we have a couple of tips here. I think the first one I would say is at the airport. There are many times when you get to the airport, and sometimes you tell yourself you'll buy a sandwich or you'll buy something at the airport. One thing that we noticed is the airports do not have food available. Many of these stalls are closed at the airports. So you want to make sure that you have some food with you. You know, bring a sandwich, bring something that you want to eat. Because when you'll find some stores are open, so more of the stores that sell the newspapers, water. Magazines.
You'll get water.
You'll get water, but the selection of food is not interesting there. So if you want to just make sure that you take care of yourself. The airlines will also, again, depending on whether we travel domestically or internationally, the food on the planes itself varied. On the domestic flights, not a lot of food.
Yes.
Whereas on the international flights, a little bit more food.
Yeah, they offer a box, and you will have anyway drinks on the flight. The last point we wanted to discuss regarding traveling during these COVID times is it, you know, what is pricing look like when you have to book a ticket at this time? What we noticed is if you have flexibility again on your tickets, is you can find cheap tickets, generally speaking, domestically in the United States or international as well. So far, we have not experienced airlines increasing the cost of their tickets. Say, you know, yes, maybe it's cheaper, but the answer is not as easy because with the level of uncertainty of this time, airlines will possibly cancel flights, like if you have different legs on your flight, might not have a possibility to go from one point A to B. B to C might work, but in between you might not have the connection. So that leaves you without much alternative, to be honest, and that happened to us in Mexico. We were staying in Oaxaca, and to go back to the United States, we had to go through Mexico City, and direct flight to Chicago. And United is not flying, and so has a partnership with a local airline, which was not flying during the period where we had to go from Oaxaca to Mexico City.
Well, just to be clear, we booked our ticket with them.
Yes.
And then shortly thereafter, they canceled it. So let's be clear. It was available in the beginning. They canceled it and canceled it completely, did not offer it up again.
When we called United, they were telling us, in 2 months, we can make you travel to Mexico City. Nothing prior to that.
So in cases like that, we had to find our own alternatives. So in this case, from Oaxaca to Mexico City, fortunately, it's that distance or those two cities are well served with buses. And then they also have people that travel back and forth. So what we did, again, concerned about COVID, so while the buses were available...
Though there's less also, fewer buses, everything is really limited.
But they're available.
Yes.
There's an option that we took, which is called Blah Blah Car. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, and it's car sharing. So it's a private owner of a car who might be going from point A to point B can advertise that they're going from point A to point B and are willing to take a certain number of passengers with them in their car, depending on how much room they have available.
Here is the site. And the way it works, exactly what Rosemary was mentioning, is you go on the website, you just fill in here information of where you're leaving from, where you're going to, and when are you planning to...
The date.
Yeah, travel. The date of your travel, how many people will be part of your group. And from there, it will tell you if there are any rides available that of the day of your travel. To make sure, at this time, there's not that many rides. So you have also to be flexible with your travel schedule. And for us, we fortunately found someone who was going to the suburbs of Mexico City the day we wanted to travel. So we were able to join that person on the ride, and it was only us and the driver, for that leg Oaxaca to Mexico City.
And so we chose that option over taking a bus because it was, only the three of us. So we felt a little safer from that perspective. But we had to then get ourselves from the suburbs of Mexico City into Mexico City to be able to then continue on with our travels to Chicago. So that's something to keep in mind. So you will have to have some flexibility on that.
One thing to know is BlaBlaCar is not available in the United States, but it is available, for example, in Mexico. I don't know if it's available in Canada, and it's available for sure across Europe. The cost is really affordable. It's typically just to cover gas, tolls, and maintenance, like maintenance of a car, typically.
The same thing happened when we were in Paris booking our travels to Greece.
There are many low-cost airlines in Europe, but due to the current restriction on travel, a lot of airlines are canceling their flights. So it happened to us in Oaxaca, and here when we arrived in Paris and wanted to set ourselves in Greece for the winter, we shortly realized that some of the flights that we had seen available previously through low-cost airline were canceled. So they were completely canceling all their flights to Greece. So we ended up having to use the more premium airline, if you wish. And certainly, the cost was more so than with a low-cost airline.
Greece is actually under lockdown now. It ended up going under lockdown shortly after we arrived.
And the things you might need to do, be a bit more creative in terms of traveling and finding alternative. One other alternative we wanted to share, we've been using it for many times prior to COVID, but it's a website called Turo. Turo is also a car sharing system in the US, and it's actually to rent a car. So I'll show you here quick what it looks like. In this case, in the US, is you're borrowing a car, if you wish, or you're renting a car from someone who owns their own car. So they increase also the safety and cleaning requirements for the cars, and it comes with insurance, and you have different level of insurance to rent the car. And that can be an alternative, again, to taking a plane if you don't have a car and you need to travel.
Should you travel during COVID? If you must, it is stressful, but it is doable if you apply some of the tips that we've shared today. So if you've got any questions, if you're thinking about traveling or have any questions, please let us know.
And do subscribe to YouTube so you get notified when the video is available.
And it's simply YouTube Authentic Food Quest. So that's how you'll find us.